my daughter said with contempt. Don't count on getting a penny of Mom's 56 million. Confident of her victory, she beamed with anticipation of the inheritance she considered hers. But when the will was read, she turned pale upon hearing my name. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The ceramic exploded against the kitchen floor, coffee spreading like spilled blood across white tiles. My morning routine shattered along with my favorite mug as the phone rang with that particular urgency that cuts through peaceful moments like a blade. Kenneth Morgan speaking. I pressed the cold device against my ear, already knowing something was wrong. Normal calls don't come at 8:30 on Thursday mornings with such insistence. Mr. Morgan, this is Robert Sterling from Sterling, Hayes & Associates. I represent your former wife, Isabella Chen Morgan. The voice carried that careful professional tone lawyers use when delivering devastating news. I'm afraid I have some unfortunate information to share with you. My chest went hollow. What kind of information? Isabella passed away 3 days ago. Sudden cardiac arrest. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dead. Isabella was dead. I gripped the kitchen counter, my knuckles turning white against the marble surface. The morning light streaming through my queen's apartment window suddenly felt too bright, too normal for a world where Isabella no longer existed. That can't be right. My voice sounded foreign, distant. She's only 50. She was always so healthy, so... I understand this is shocking, Mr. Morgan. The family held a private service yesterday. Sterling's tone softened slightly. However, there's another matter. Isabella left a comprehensive will, and you were mentioned prominently in her estate planning. I sank into the kitchen chair, still processing the first bombshell. Me? But we've been divorced for 10 years. We barely spoke. Yes, sir. That's precisely why I'm calling. The will reading is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. Your presence is specifically requested. After hanging up, I sat motionless in my small kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my shattered morning. Coffee dripped steadily from the counter edge, marking time in a world that had suddenly shifted beneath my feet. I walked to the living room, where old photo albums gathered dust on forgotten shelves. My hands moved without conscious thought, pulling out the leather-bound book I hadn't touched in years. There she was on the first page, Isabella at 21, laughing at something I'd said, her dark hair catching sunlight on the Boston University campus. Her smile was radiant, unguarded, nothing like the polished executive she'd become before our marriage crumbled. In this photo, she wore a simple sweater and jeans, her economics textbook tucked under one arm, looking at me like I was the most fascinating person in the world. I touched the faded photograph, remembering how my heart had raced the first time I'd worked up the courage to approach her in the library. She'd been surrounded by intimidating textbooks, but her eyes had lit up when I'd stammered my request for tutoring help. The phone call echoed in my mind. Isabella, gone. After all these years of carefully maintained distance, of structured conversations about Brooke's visitation schedule, of polite but cold exchanges at graduation ceremonies and school events, now there would be silence forever. I remembered the first time I saw her. The economics section of Boston University's library had always intimidated me, with its towering shelves of complex theories I couldn't grasp. But there she sat, perfectly at ease among the academic chaos, highlighter moving across pages with confident strokes. Isabella Chen had a reputation among our class, brilliant, ambitious, and completely out of my league. Her professors called on her constantly, knowing she'd have thoughtful answers. Other students borrowed her notes. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that made my business administration major feel pedestrian. Excuse me, I'd managed, clutching my failing midterm exam like evidence of my incompetence. Could you help me understand supply and demand curves? I'm completely lost. She'd looked up from her textbook, and I'd nearly lost my nerve entirely. Her eyes were warm brown, intelligent and kind. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Supply and demand? She'd closed her book deliberately. Sure, but only if you buy me coffee afterward. Good tutoring requires serious caffeine. That first coffee date lasted 4 hours. We'd claimed a corner table at the campus caf, economics forgotten, as we discovered each other's dreams. Isabella wanted to revolutionize business through technology. This was 1995, when the internet was still mysterious to most people, but she saw possibilities others missed. "I want to create something that changes how people work together," she'd explained, eyes bright with ambition. "Software that makes businesses more efficient, more human." I'd shared my simpler dreams, a steady job, maybe managing a small company someday, definitely marriage and children, dreams that seemed modest next to her grand visions. But she'd listened like they mattered. "You'd be amazing at management," she'd said. "You actually listen to people. That's rarer than you think." Throughout that spring semester, we'd become inseparable. Study sessions in the library evolved into long walks across campus, where she'd explain her latest business ideas, while I'd point out the practical challenges she'd overlooked. We balanced each other perfectly, her soaring ambition grounded by my steady pragmatism. Our first kiss happened under the blooming cherry trees near the student union. She'd been describing her internship interview when I'd stopped listening entirely, lost in the way afternoon light caught in her hair. "Are you even paying attention to me?" she'd laughed. "Always," I'd whispered, and then somehow we were kissing, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as months of building attraction finally found expression. By senior year, we were planning our future together. Isabella's startup ideas had evolved into concrete business plans, complete with market research and financial projections. She'd work on launching her company while I'd provide stability through traditional employment. "We'll be a team," she'd said one evening, as we'd walked hand in hand through Boston Common. "Your practical mind keeps my crazy ideas grounded. My ambition pushes you toward bigger dreams." Graduation day arrived warm and bright. As we'd posed for photos in our caps and gowns, I'd known with absolute certainty that this woman was my future. That evening, in the same cafe, where we'd had our first coffee, I'd dropped to one knee with my grandmother's simple gold ring. "Isabella Chen, you've made me braver, smarter, and happier than I ever thought possible." My voice had shaken with nervous energy. "Will you marry me?" Her yes had been immediate, joyful, accompanied by tears that made her eyes shine even brighter. We'd married 6 months later, in a small ceremony at her parents' house, surrounded by family and close friends. Simple vows, simple reception, simple dreams of building something beautiful together. We thought we had it all figured out. Our first home was a modest 2-story house in Westchester, with a small garden and enough room for the family we planned to build. Isabella had insisted on a corner office for her business planning, while I'd claimed the basement for a workshop, where I could tinker with furniture projects. Those early married months felt magical. We'd wake up together, share coffee while reading different sections of the newspaper, then head off to our respective jobs. Isabella to her marketing position at a tech firm, me to my role as an assistant manager at a regional logistics company. Evenings belonged to us and Isabella's growing business dreams. She'd spread papers across our kitchen table, sketching organizational charts and software flowcharts while I'd cook dinner and offer feedback on her ideas. "What if your efficiency software could integrate with payroll systems?" I'd suggested one autumn evening, stirring pasta sauce while she worked. "Small businesses would love streamlined operations." "Kenneth, that's brilliant!" She jumped up to kiss me, then immediately started scribbling new notes. "You always see the practical applications I miss." When Isabella discovered she was pregnant in early 1999, our joy was complete. We'd converted the spare bedroom into a nursery, painting walls soft yellow, since we'd decided to wait for the birth to learn the baby's gender. Isabella had worked right up until her due date, determined to launch her company's beta version before becoming a mother. Brooke arrived on a crisp October morning after 12 hours of labor that left Isabella exhausted but radiant. Our daughter was perfect, tiny fists, dark hair like her mother's, and lungs that announced her presence to the entire maternity ward. "She's going to change the world," Isabella had whispered, cradling our newborn daughter. "Just like her mother," I'd replied, stroking Isabella's sweat-dampened hair. Those first months of parenthood tested us, but also strengthened our partnership. We'd developed a rhythm. I'd handle night feedings so Isabella could rest before long days spent coding her software prototype. She'd take over when I'd return from work, giving me time with Brooke while she'd debug programs. Isabella's business idea had crystallized into something revolutionary for its time: cloud-based project management software that could help small businesses coordinate remote teams. In 1999, working from home was still unusual, but Isabella had foreseen the coming changes. "The internet is going to transform how people work," she'd explained to potential investors during late-night phone calls. Distance won't matter anymore. Talent will be accessible globally. I'd believed in her vision completely. While she'd coded and pitched, I'd managed our household finances, scheduled her meetings, and provided the stable foundation that allowed her creativity to flourish. We'd been a perfect team, her innovation paired with my practical support. Weekend mornings became our sanctuary. Isabella would nurse Brooke in the rocking chair I'd built, sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows, while I'd bring coffee and fresh fruit. We'd plan our future together, the house we'd buy when her company succeeded, vacations we'd take as a family, the second child we wanted. I want Brooke to see that dreams become reality through hard work and partnership, Isabella had said one Sunday morning, our daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. She'll grow up knowing that anything is possible when people support each other. By Brooke's first birthday, Isabella's company had secured initial funding and hired its first 2 employees. She'd transformed our garage into a proper office space, complete with multiple computer stations and a whiteboard covered in project timelines. "We're really doing this," she'd marveled one evening, showing me their first quarterly revenue report. "It's actually working." I'd held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling proud and grateful for the life we'd built together. Isabella was achieving her ambitious dreams while remaining a devoted mother and wife. I was contributing through my steady income and unwavering support. Brooke was healthy and happy, growing up surrounded by love and possibility. We had no idea what was coming. 8 years later, everything we'd built began crumbling around us. The morning news droned about market collapse and bank failures, while Isabella stared at her laptop screen, coffee growing cold in her trembling hands. 70% of our clients just canceled their contracts, she whispered, not looking up from the devastating email chain. The funding we were counting on, it's gone. The 2008 financial crisis hit our family like a sledgehammer. Isabella's company, which had grown into a thriving operation with 12 employees, suddenly faced bankruptcy. Overnight, our comfortable middle-class life became a desperate scramble for survival. I took a second job in construction, leaving before dawn and returning after midnight, my body aching from 12-hour days of manual labor. The executive position I'd held for 6 years disappeared in budget cuts, forcing me to accept whatever work I could find: restaurant kitchen prep, weekend warehouse shifts, anything that paid cash. Isabella stopped coming home for dinner. Her office became her refuge, a place where she could pretend that working 20-hour days might somehow save the company she'd poured her soul into building. When I'd bring her sandwiches, I'd find her surrounded by empty energy drink cans and crumpled papers, her eyes red-rimmed from staring at computer screens. "You need to eat something," I'd plead, setting food beside her keyboard. "I can't stop now," she'd snap without looking at me. "Every minute I'm not working, we're losing money we can't afford to lose." Our 9-year-old daughter Brooke began staying with neighbors after school because neither of us was home anymore. The babysitter we'd hired became more parent than we were, helping with homework, making dinner, tucking Brooke into bed while we fought financial fires. One rare evening when we all sat together at the kitchen table, the tension exploded over something trivial, Brooke asking why we never went to movies anymore. "Because movies cost money we don't have." Isabella slammed her fork down so hard the plates jumped. "Everything costs money. Do you understand that Daddy and I are working ourselves to death just to keep this house?" Brooke's eyes filled with tears. She was too young to understand economic collapse, but old enough to feel her parents' desperation. I reached for Isabella's hand across the table, but she pulled away. "Don't," she said coldly. "I have 3 investor calls tonight." That night, after Isabella locked herself in her office and Brooke cried herself to sleep, I sat alone in our darkened living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together, the expensive furniture we'd bought during better times, the family photos that showed happier faces, the dreams we'd shared about growing old together. By 2010, we'd sold Isabella's engagement ring, my motorcycle, and most of our furniture. The house felt empty, echoing with the ghosts of better times. Isabella's company survived, barely. But our marriage had become collateral damage in the war for financial survival. I should have seen the signs that something else was breaking beyond our bank account. 2 years of fighting for survival had transformed us into strangers living in the same house. Isabella worked from her office until 3 in the morning, then slept until noon, while I juggled my day job with evening restaurant shifts. We passed each other in hallways like polite roommates, our conversations limited to logistics about Brooke's schedule and monthly bills. The discovery happened by accident on a quiet Sunday afternoon in March 2012. Brooke was at a friend's house, Isabella was showering, and I needed to check our insurance information on her laptop. The screen displayed her open email, and there it was, a message from David Chen, her business partner, that made my blood freeze. "Last night was perfect, Bella. I can't stop thinking about your laugh, the way you looked at me. I love you." My hands shook as I scrolled through months of correspondence. Intimate messages about stolen lunches, late-night conversations in her office, feelings they'd both tried to resist. The emotional affair had clearly become physical, probably starting during the worst of our financial crisis, when I'd been working 80-hour weeks and Isabella had needed someone who understood her professional struggles. "What are you doing on my computer?" Isabella's voice came from behind me, sharp with panic. I turned slowly, the laptop screen still glowing with evidence of her betrayal. "Who exactly is David, and why is he writing love letters to my wife?" Her face went pale, then flushed red. "Kenneth, I can explain." "Explain what? That while I've been killing myself working 3 jobs to save our family, you've been falling in love with someone else?" My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "How long, Isabella? How long has this been going on?" "It's not what you think." She grabbed for the laptop, but I held it out of reach. "David understands what I'm going through with the company. He gets my dreams, my stress. I supported your dreams for 15 years. The words exploded out of me. "I gave up my own career advancement to be your foundation. I worked myself into exhaustion to keep us afloat while you built your empire." "But you never really understood," she shouted back. "You were supportive, yes, but you never felt the passion I felt. David and I, we share something deeper. We shared something deeper. We had 15 years together, a child, a life." I slammed the laptop shut. "Apparently that meant nothing compared to your business partner's understanding of quarterly reports." 13-year-old Brooke appeared in the doorway, her face confused and frightened. "Why are you yelling? What's happening?" Isabella immediately switched to protective mother mode. "Daddy's upset about work stress, honey. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. Over the following weeks, Isabella moved into the guest bedroom while we tried counseling, but her heart was already gone. She'd found something with David that she claimed I could never provide: complete understanding of her professional ambitions, shared excitement about business challenges, intellectual partnership that went beyond domestic support. The divorce proceedings dragged through 2013 and 2014. Isabella got primary custody of Brooke, keeping our Westchester house and her recovered company. I moved to a small apartment in Queens, visiting my daughter every other weekend under court-supervised arrangements that felt like prison visits. Brooke blamed me entirely for the family's destruction. In her teenage logic, I was the one who left, therefore, I was the abandoner. Isabella never contradicted this narrative, perhaps finding it easier than explaining adult complexities about emotional infidelity and irreconcilable differences. The last day I spent in the house we'd shared, I packed my clothes and a few personal items while Isabella worked in her office, and Brooke stayed at a friend's house to avoid the awkwardness. Rain drummed against the windows as I loaded cardboard boxes into my car, each one containing pieces of a life I'd never get back. Looking back at the house in my rearview mirror, I knew I was losing more than a marriage. I was losing my identity as a husband and father, my place in a family structure that had defined me for nearly 2 decades. I never saw them again until today. The rain at Greenwood Cemetery fell steadily, turning the elegant memorial service into something from a film noir. I stood at the chapel's edge, water dripping from my cheap umbrella, watching mourners in expensive black coats gather around Isabella's casket. 10 years had passed since I'd last seen my daughter, and now Brooke stood near the front of the chapel like a stranger. She'd grown into Isabella's vision of success: designer dress, confident posture, the kind of polished appearance that commanded respect in corporate boardrooms. But something cold emanated from her, a hardness that hadn't existed in the child I'd raised. I approached hesitantly, unsure of my welcome. Several mourners recognized me, their whispered conversations and pointed stares making clear I was an unwelcome ghost from Isabella's past. These were her business associates, wealthy friends from her current life, people who probably knew nothing about the struggling family man who'd once shared her bed. At the casket, I found a moment of private goodbye. Isabella looked peaceful, younger somehow. The stress lines I remembered from our final years together smoothed away. I touched the cold metal rim and whispered an apology for all the ways we'd failed each other. Look who decided to show up. The voice behind me dripped with theatrical disdain. Dad, the caring father, gracing us with his presence at last. I turned to face my daughter, my heart breaking at the venom in her eyes. Brooke, save it. She stepped closer, her voice pitched perfectly for the watching crowd. 10 years of silence, and now you crawl out for the funeral? How thoughtful. Before I could respond, she moved slightly backward as I stepped forward, creating the perfect setup for her next move. Her foot shot out with practiced precision, catching my ankle and sending me sprawling across the chapel floor in front of 100 shocked mourners. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I hit the marble, my umbrella clattering across the aisle. Cell phones appeared, capturing my humiliation for social media posterity. I pulled myself up slowly, maintaining what dignity I could, while Brooke watched with satisfaction. "Oops," she said with mock concern, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How clumsy of you, Dad. Just like when you stumbled out of our lives." The chapel fell silent except for rain against windows and my daughter's steady breathing. I brushed off my jacket and straightened my tie, refusing to let her public performance break me completely. "I deserve that," I said quietly, meeting her eyes. "But your mother deserved better than this circus." For just a moment, something flickered in Brooke's expression, surprise, maybe even regret. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the armor of resentment she'd been polishing for a decade. "Mr. Morgan?" A voice interrupted our standoff. Robert Sterling, the attorney who'd called me yesterday, approached with obvious discomfort. "We need to discuss your late wife's will. There are significant matters to address." The mourners began murmuring with new interest. Brooke's confident expression wavered for the first time, confusion replacing her satisfied smirk. "What will?" she demanded, looking between Sterling and me. "What's he talking about?" Sterling cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Both of you need to attend the reading tomorrow afternoon." My daughter's perfect composure finally cracked, revealing the uncertainty beneath her polished exterior. I pushed myself up from the marble floor, ignoring the sharp pain in my scraped palms and the grass stains spreading across my only decent suit. Around us, the chapel had fallen into that particular kind of silence that follows public disasters, heavy, uncomfortable, thick with secondhand embarrassment. Brooke stood over me, satisfaction radiating from her perfectly composed features. She'd planned this moment, choreographed my humiliation down to the last detail. The expensive mourners shifted in their seats, some recording discreetly with their phones, others whispering behind manicured hands. "Feel better now?" I asked quietly, brushing cemetery dirt from my jacket. My daughter's eyes blazed with 10 years of accumulated anger. "You destroyed our lives!" Her voice echoed off the chapel walls, disturbing the sacred atmosphere. "Mom spent years rebuilding after you abandoned us. She died from the stress of carrying this family alone." The accusation hit harder than my fall. Several guests gasped, and I heard someone behind me whisper, "That's the ex-husband." Another voice added, "How terrible, showing up after all these years." "Brooke, please." I kept my voice low, respectful of the setting. "This is your mother's funeral. She deserves better than this circus." "Don't you dare lecture me about respect." She stepped closer, her designer heels clicking against the marble. "Where was your respect when you walked out on a 9-year-old girl? When you missed every birthday, every graduation, every moment that mattered?" An elderly woman in an expensive fur coat approached hesitantly. "Perhaps you could continue this conversation privately? This is hardly appropriate." "Stay out of this!" Brooke snapped, her polished facade cracking further. "This man destroyed my family. He has no right to be here." I noticed the funeral director approaching, his face grave with professional concern. Behind him, other guests were beginning to stand, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating drama in this sacred space. "You want to know why I'm here?" I met my daughter's furious gaze steadily. "Because despite everything that went wrong between your mother and me, I loved her once. I respected what she built, what she achieved. I came to pay my respects, not to cause pain." "Lies!" Brooke's voice cracked slightly. "You never cared about anything except yourself. You left us with nothing. That's enough. The funeral director's authoritative voice cut through our confrontation. I understand emotions are running high, but we cannot allow this disruption to continue. Other families are trying to mourn their loved ones. The chapel had emptied except for a few lingering guests watching our family tragedy unfold. I could see phones still recording, capturing my humiliation for whatever social media judgment awaited. I'm sorry, I said to the funeral director, then looked at the remaining guests. I apologize for disturbing this service. Isabella deserved better. Brooke opened her mouth for another attack, but the funeral director held up his hand. Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or take this outside. For the first time since I'd arrived, my daughter seemed to realize how her behavior appeared to others. Her cheeks flushed red as she noticed the disapproving stares from Isabella's wealthy friends and business associates. Fine, she hissed, straightening her black dress. But this conversation isn't over. As the chapel began to empty properly, I saw Robert Sterling approaching again, his expression carefully neutral, despite having witnessed our family's complete breakdown in public. Excuse me, Mr. Morgan, Sterling said, glancing meaningfully at Brooke. We really do need to discuss that legal matter. Sterling approached with the measured steps of a man accustomed to handling volatile family dynamics. His expensive briefcase and perfectly pressed suit marked him as someone used to dealing with significant money, the kind of attorney Isabella's success could afford. Mr. Morgan, I apologize for interrupting during such a difficult time, he began, his tone professionally sympathetic. However, Isabella's will requires immediate attention. I need both you and Miss Morgan present tomorrow at 2 o'clock sharp. I wiped my still stinging palms on my jacket, leaving faint streaks of blood on the cheap fabric. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I honestly don't expect Isabella left me anything significant. I'll attend if it's legally necessary, but... Oh, please! Brooke's laugh cut through my words like breaking glass. Her earlier embarrassment had transformed back into cruel amusement. Dad, you're going to witness me inherit $56 million. Won't that be fun for you? Sterling's expression remained neutral, but I caught something flickering in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. He handed me an elegant business card with gold lettering. The reading will take place at our Manhattan offices. The address is on the card. His voice carried the weight of legal formality. Both of you are specifically named in the will, so attendance isn't optional. Brooke stepped between us, her confidence radiating like heat. This is going to be absolutely delicious. 10 years of radio silence, and now Daddy gets to watch me become one of the wealthiest women in New York. She turned to face me directly. I hope you enjoy watching everything you walked away from pass to someone who actually deserved it. Other mourners were climbing into expensive cars, their quiet conversations probably dissecting the dramatic scene they had witnessed. Rain continued falling steadily, turning the cemetery paths into muddy streams. Miss Morgan, Sterling said carefully, I should mention that wills can sometimes contain unexpected provisions. It's best not to make assumptions about, oh, please, Brooke waved dismissively. Mom and I discussed her estate planning extensively. I know exactly what's coming. She looked at me with undisguised satisfaction. The company, the houses, the investment portfolio, all of it mine. Dad here might get some token gesture, maybe enough for a nice dinner. I felt exhausted by her cruelty, by the whole impossible day. Brooke, I didn't come here expecting anything. I just wanted to pay my respects to your mother. How noble, she sneered. The humble ex-husband expecting nothing. Well, you'll get exactly what you deserve, which is nothing. Sterling cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should save these discussions for tomorrow's formal reading. My office is at 47th and Madison 23rd floor. Please arrive promptly at 2. As he walked away, Brooke turned to me one final time. I almost feel sorry for you, Dad. Tomorrow's going to be humiliating in a completely different way. But hey, at least you'll finally understand exactly how much Mom valued your contribution to our family. She clicked away toward a waiting black sedan, leaving me standing alone in the cemetery rain, holding a business card that felt heavier than it should. The next afternoon would bring answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Sterling's Manhattan law office occupied an entire floor of a gleaming midtown tower. Its mahogany-paneled conference room, designed to intimidate and impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered commanding views of the city Isabella had conquered, while expensive artwork lined walls that probably cost more than my annual salary. I arrived precisely at 2, wearing my best shirt and the tie I'd bought for Brooke's high school graduation, the last family event I'd attended. Brooke swept in 5 minutes later, commanding attention in a designer black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Punctual as always, Dad," she said without warmth, settling into the leather chair across from me. "Ready for your consolation prize?" Sterling entered carrying a thick legal folder, his expression unreadable. "Thank you both for coming. Isabella's will is comprehensive, so please hold questions until I've finished reading." He opened the document with ceremony befitting its importance. The last will and testament of Isabella Chen Morgan, dated March 15, 2025. The legal preamble seemed endless. Declarations of sound mind, revocation of previous wills, appointment of executors. Brooke drummed manicured fingers impatiently against the mahogany table, clearly eager to hear her inheritance announced. "To my beloved daughter, Brooke Morgan," Sterling read, his voice steady and professional. "I leave my apartment on Fifth Avenue, all personal effects contained therein, and the sum of $500,000. The drumming stopped. Brooke's confident expression flickered. "Wait, that's it? What about the company, the investment portfolio, the rest of the estate?" Sterling continued reading, without acknowledging her interruption. "To Kenneth Morgan, my former husband, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all business interests, real property excluding the Fifth Avenue apartment, investment accounts, and liquid assets totaling approximately $55.5 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the table edge, certain I'd misheard. $55 million. The company Isabella had built from nothing. Everything. "That's impossible!" Brooke shot to her feet, her face draining of color. "There has to be a mistake. Mom would never, she couldn't." "There's more," Sterling said calmly. He cleared his throat and continued, "I also leave Kenneth full operational control of Chen Morgan Technologies, trusting his practical wisdom to guide the company's future growth." My hands trembled as the magnitude hit me. Not just money, responsibility for Isabella's life's work, for the employees who depended on the company, for everything she'd sacrificed our marriage to build. "Kenneth," Isabella's voice seemed to speak through Sterling's careful reading, "you were always my foundation, the stable ground beneath my ambitious dreams. I failed you as a wife, but I never forgot your loyalty, your support during our hardest years. I'm asking you to do what I couldn't. Teach our daughter the value of earning what she receives." Brooke stood frozen, her mouth open in disbelief. "This is insane. I'm her daughter. I worked with her. I understood the business." "The will includes a personal message for Brooke," Sterling continued. "My darling daughter, you have intelligence and potential, but you've never learned to build something from struggle. $500,000 is enough to start any life you choose, if you choose wisely. Your father can teach you what I failed to, that the most valuable things must be earned, not inherited." Silence filled the elegant conference room like thick fog. I stared at the legal documents, trying to process that my quiet life of financial struggle had just been completely obliterated. Brooke's silence stretched until it became dangerous. "This is insane!" Brooke's voice shattered the conference room's professional atmosphere like breaking crystal. She slammed both palms against the mahogany table, sending Sterling's carefully arranged documents flying. "This will is fraudulent. He bribed you. He corrupted my mother." I sat frozen, still processing the impossible reality. $55 million. Isabella's company. Everything she'd built during the years we'd been apart, now somehow mine. The numbers felt abstract, meaningless, like someone else's lottery ticket accidentally handed to me. "Miss Morgan, I understand this is shocking," Sterling replied with practiced calm, gathering scattered papers. "However, this will was prepared with multiple witnesses, notarized documentation, and video testimony from your mother. The security protocols make fraud impossible." "I don't care about your protocols." Brooke whirled on me, her face flushed with rage. "Dad, what did you promise her? What lies did you tell? Did you threaten her when she was dying?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "Brooke, I swear to you, I knew nothing about this. Nothing. I haven't spoken to your mother in 10 years except through Christmas cards." "Lies!" She began pacing frantically, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown timer. Mom would never give you everything. She built that company herself. She earned every dollar while you sat in your pathetic apartment doing nothing. Sterling cleared his throat with authority. I have security footage of your mother recording her final testament just 3 months ago. She was alone, lucid, and emphatic about her decisions. The will underwent 3 separate legal reviews. Then she was coerced, blackmailed, someone got to her. Brooke's professional composure had completely evaporated, revealing the spoiled child beneath the corporate facade. This is my inheritance, my company, my money. I found my voice, though it felt foreign in my throat. Brooke, if this is legitimate, and apparently it is, then your mother had reasons. She left you a personal message explaining. I don't want her explanations, she screamed, spinning to face me again. I want what's rightfully mine. I worked with her. I understood the business. You've never even seen the inside of a boardroom. Your mother specifically requested that Kenneth learn the business operations, Sterling interjected smoothly. She arranged for a comprehensive transition period with the existing management team. The reality began settling over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just money. It was responsibility for hundreds of employees, for decisions that affected real lives, for continuing Isabella's vision in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. This won't stand, Brooke declared, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'm filing a lawsuit tomorrow. I'm hiring the best attorneys in New York. I'm going to expose this corruption publicly. She grabbed her purse and stalked toward the door, then turned back with a smile that contained no warmth. Enjoy your moment, Dad. It won't last long. When I'm finished, you'll be lucky to keep that apartment in Queens. The conference room door slammed behind her with finality that echoed through the elegant space. Sterling and I sat in silence for several moments, the weight of family destruction settling between us. Mr. Morgan, he said finally, I need to explain what you've actually inherited. 2 weeks later, I stood in the gleaming headquarters of Chen Morgan Technologies, trying to comprehend the empire Isabella had built. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered commanding views of Manhattan, while state-of-the-art workstations buzzed with the quiet efficiency of innovation in motion. Your wife, ex-wife, was remarkable, explained Sarah Chen, the company's chief operating officer, and apparently no relation to David despite sharing a surname. She revolutionized project management software for remote teams. We've got contracts with Fortune 500 companies across 3 continents. The numbers were staggering. 230 employees, 50 million in annual revenue, growth projections that would double the company's value within 5 years. Isabella hadn't just succeeded. She'd built something that mattered, something that employed people and solved real problems. She talked about you sometimes, Sarah added quietly as we toured the research and development floor, especially near the end. She said you were the foundation that let her dare to dream big. Each day brought new revelations about Isabella's vision and values. She'd established scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing technology careers. The company offered 6 months paid family leave and profit sharing for all employees. She'd created exactly the kind of workplace she'd dreamed about in our college conversations. Meanwhile, Brooke's legal challenge moved through the courts with predictable determination. Her attorneys filed motions claiming undue influence, mental incapacity, and fraud. Sterling prepared our defense with meticulous care, assembling documentation that read like a fortress of legal protection. The hearing took place in federal court on a gray morning that matched my mood. Brooke arrived with 3 expensive lawyers, their confidence radiating like expensive cologne. She'd clearly spent significant money on this challenge, probably most of her inheritance. Your Honor, Brooke's lead attorney declared, we contend that Kenneth Morgan manipulated a dying woman through promises of reconciliation, exploiting her guilt about their failed marriage. The accusation stung because it contained a grain of the truth I wished were real. I would have treasured reconciliation with Isabella, would have gladly traded all this wealth for one honest conversation about our mistakes. Sterling's response was methodical and devastating. Security footage showed Isabella alone and determined while recording her video testament. Medical records proved her mental acuity right until her death. Financial records demonstrated that she'd been planning this distribution for over a year. Furthermore, Your Honor, Sterling continued, producing a thick folder, Kenneth Morgan had no knowledge of these provisions. Phone records show no contact between the parties. The will was secured in our vault with instructions that he not be contacted until after Mrs. Chen Morgan's death. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence with careful attention. After 2 hours of testimony, she delivered her ruling with clear authority. The petition is denied. This will demonstrate clear intent, proper execution, and legal validity. The claims of fraud and undue influence are not supported by evidence. Brooke's face crumpled as her attorneys gathered their papers in defeat. She'd gambled her inheritance on this challenge and lost spectacularly. As we left the courthouse, I felt vindicated, but not victorious. Justice had been served, but a family remained broken. A month later, my phone rang in the quiet of my Queens apartment. The phone's shrill ring cut through the evening silence of my apartment, the same apartment that no longer felt quite so small, now that I understood the resources at my disposal. I'd been reading quarterly reports from the company, still amazed that Isabella had entrusted me with something so magnificent. "Dad?" The voice was different, smaller, vulnerable, stripped of the venom I'd heard in the courthouse. "It's Brooke. Could we talk?" A month of silence had passed since her legal defeat. I'd heard through Sterling that she'd spent most of her inheritance on attorney fees, leaving her with barely enough for a security deposit on a modest apartment. "Of course we can talk," I said carefully, settling into my worn recliner. "What's on your mind?" I was wrong. The words came out in a rush, as if she'd rehearsed them. About everything. About you. About the will. About Mom's decisions. I've had time to think, and I realize I was just hurt and scared. I recognized the tone, the same calculated sweetness she'd used as a child when asking for allowance increases or later curfews. "I'm listening. I want to make things right between us. I want to be a family again." Her voice caught beautifully on the word family. "I know I said terrible things, accused you of awful things. I was grieving and confused. Brooke, I appreciate you calling, but I need your help, Dad." The vulnerability cracked slightly, revealing desperation underneath. "I lost my job when the lawsuit became public. My apartment applications keep getting rejected. I'm running out of money, and I don't know what to do." There it was, the real reason for her newfound humility. I'd learned to recognize manipulation during my business education these past weeks, studying Isabella's notes about employee management and motivation. "I understand you're struggling," I said gently. "But before we discuss any kind of help, we need to establish some ground rules." "Anything. I'll do anything to fix this relationship." "First, you need to get a job. Not an executive position, not management, an entry-level job where you learn what it means to earn your way." Silence stretched across the phone line. "Dad, I have an MBA. I worked at Mom's company for 3 years. Working for your mother isn't the same as building something yourself. Isabella wanted you to learn responsibility, and that starts with earning your own way. But I could help you run the company. I know the systems, the clients, eventually, perhaps. But first, you prove you can succeed without family money or connections. You find work, you pay your own rent, you build your own life." "That's not fair!" The mask slipped, revealing familiar anger. "I shouldn't have to start over like some college graduate. Your mother started over many times. She worked restaurant jobs to pay for college. She took out loans for her first business attempt. She earned everything she achieved. This is punishment, isn't it? You're enjoying this." "No, Brooke. This is education. The same education Isabella tried to give you, but you were too privileged to receive it." I paused, letting the words sink in. "If you want a relationship with me, it begins with you proving you can stand on your own feet. And if I do this, if I get some menial job and struggle to pay rent, then what? Then we talk again. We build trust slowly. We see if you can become the woman your mother believed you could be." Another long silence. When she spoke again, the manipulation was gone, replaced by something that might have been genuine desperation. "I don't know how to do this. I've never been without money, without connections, without someone taking care of me." "Then it's time you learned. Your mother left you enough for a fresh start. Use it wisely." "Dad, do you think she'd be proud of me if I did this?" For the first time in our conversation, I heard the lost child beneath the entitled adult. "I think she'd be proud of you for trying. That's all she ever wanted, for you to try building something yourself." After hanging up, I sat in my small apartment, no longer the same man who'd received that devastating phone call about Isabella's death just 2 months ago. I now controlled more wealth than I'd ever imagined, but more importantly, I understood the responsibility that came with it. Isabella had given me the tools to complete our daughter's education, not in business or technology, but in character. Whether Brooke chose to learn remained entirely up to her. The phone sat silent beside me, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace with the future. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.